Hi everyone, welcome to the Finance Story Career Insight series. I'm Chantal, founder of the Finance Story, a platform that enables you make better career decisions. So we've been getting a lot of questions, from our readers and people who follow the Finance Story to give us a market view of the hiring opportunities in the UAE post CT became effective, corporate tax became effective. So we thought, hey, before we share more about opportunities and what's happening, let's share what's happening in the market. How is the market shaping post corporate tax happening? What are clients thinking? So to give us a perspective on all of this, we have with us a very knowledgeable Nirav Shah. He's a founder of Fame Advisory. He's going to help us understand and get a perspective of what has changed post corporate tax has become effective. What are the hiring trends? What are clients looking at? And a lot more. So everyone, welcome, Nirav sir. Sir, thank you so much for making the time. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Chantal, and to the Finance Story for having us on this conversation that we are going to have today for an hour.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. So, all of you watching, thank you so much for joining in. If you have any questions, do type it out. Really happy to answer and address any question. So, sir, before we go ahead, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Okay, how did you start your career? How did Dubai happen? How did Fame Advisory happen? And what are the kind of services that your firm, provides? If you could just give us an idea on that.
Sure. So let me start. I qualified my CA in 1994. My father is also a chartered accountant, and he's based in Gujarat in India. And immediately after qualifying, I went back and joined him for about 2.5 or 3 years, and learned a lot of tricks on the ground. Did some rural bank branch audits and whatnot. Then me and my father sat down and decided that look, individual practice you can only do certain things in certain manner, and there's also a limitation on what you learn. So then we said, okay, what are the best option? Then he said, let's. Then I decided to come to Mumbai back and join one of the big four. So I took my time, took the interview process. And then KPMG I joined in 1998. Uh, so from 94 November I qualified. 95 to 98 I was working with my dad in our own firm. 98 I joined KPMG, and I was part of the tax team because I had a flair or liking for the tax. Um, I worked with one of the finest tax professionals at that time, and KPMG tax team was number one at that time, one of the largest tax team, and we were growing very fast, and we helped a lot of Indian corporates go abroad, do acquisition, and all of that, and we were one of the best team for international tax. I specialized in international tax with them. Thereafter, I joined a diamond firm, a family-owned diamond firm, and they had aspiration to grow multinational. And I was designated as a vice president for tax and finance. With them, I moved to Dubai, and from here, I was managing about 10 countries, tax, legal, and finance aspects. Um, so that went on till about 2014. And of course, with any industry jobs, after a point, you feel that you've done everything that you could, and therefore, what next, and how do you grow then as a professional? So then I discussed with my employer at that time that I want to do something on my own and go back to the consulting or profession. And that's how I founded Fame Advisory in 94 and 2014 and to 2015 beginning. Imagine, Chantal, that at that time there were no taxes in UAE. And because I was based here, my family preferred to stay here. So I said, okay, let's start a tax consulting firm in Dubai, you know. And Fame Advisory is a boutique tax consulting. We don't do audit like many other competitors of ours. We don't do accounting. We are only advising on tax and international tax matters, right? So when you start off a firm in a place like Dubai where there are no taxes and you start a tax consulting firm, people were laughing at me, right? And this guy has gone crazy. What is he trying to do? Okay, but when you know international tax, you know that you can add a lot of value by using UAE because there were no taxes at that time. So you can properly set up companies in UAE, have substance, allocate proper margin with transfer pricing, and no pay no taxes on that. And we did a lot of advisory with multinationals and families on estate planning, succession planning, advising on multinational structures, setting up, getting them to do some due diligence for acquisition and all of that. So you try and do all of the things that kind of come your way. But fortunately, my focus remained that I do only tax or tax related work and not divert into few other things that you end up doing when you become a founder or when you start doing things on your own. So yeah, that's how Fame started. Now, of course, we are a 20 people's team, and we do VA compliances, we do advisory, and of course, we do some bit of company setup also as part of our advisory wherever we are advising clients. So yes, we have three departments: company setup, compliance, and advisory. And we are now fortunate to have over 150 corporates as our client, over 20 or 30 families as our client on various things. And yeah, so that's what we keep doing.
Wow, I didn't know this part. That's amazing. So you started a tax firm and there was no tax in the UAE. Amazing. That's great. So you're like the best person to address our next question.
Some
Okay.
people blame us that all the taxes came because of you.
Could be. So yes, cool. Okay, so that's my next question. So my next question is, when VAT was out, when corporate tax was out. Okay, now let's talk more about corporate tax. Okay, what impact did it have on the clients? Okay, and what was the impact on the economy?
So, to understand the impact on the economy, we are still in the early days, and we'll come to know a bit more a little later. However, understand that with any corporate tax or any tax system coming in, the compliance comes in, and that's something when you're used to for last 40, 50 years not having any compliance. That's first of all is kind of a, cultural shock. That, okay, now I need to do this also, I need to do that also. So first challenge is more about getting clients ready to accept this kind of compliance. So that's where you have a lot of discussion to and fro on why and why not, and what was the rationale, and why you had it. And therefore, now that you have it, let's start preparing and doing it properly. So that's the main thing. But if you ask me, with a rate of 9%, and with some of the exceptions or exclusions available, I don't think it's too heavy a burden from a tax rate point of view. So the cost impact is not going to be that significant for any businesses. Of course, there'll be few who will not be able to kind of bear this kind of an additional burden where it is very competitive industry. And of course, the cost of doing business in UAE itself is also very high. So keeping both that in mind, there will be some areas where people will get impacted. But by and large, if you look at it, I don't think the impact of that is going to be that significant. And what it has done is it has improved the UAE's perception manifold. It was perceived as a tax haven, a zero tax country so far. A lot of people, a lot of corporates shied away from doing business with UAE or in UAE because they didn't want to be branded as doing business out of a tax haven. So now they are saying, okay, you have a tax, let's do compliance, let's operate. It's another option, that to consider. There are a lot of pluses and minuses, of course, but I think overall it will do a lot more good to UAE than other way around.
Okay, okay, that's excellent. So what about SMEs? Because if you can give a little bit of perspective on SMEs, how has that impacted SMEs, and uh, are they looking at in terms of them being your clients? What have they sought from you?
So there are, like I say, that SMEs who are predominantly traders, and when they have very thin margins already in the trade, to have this additional kind of burden or a cost, they are still looking at it as a cost which has been added to them. And trying to see if they can manage with this cost, not, and how what are the best way to optimize or manage it. So a lot of them came to us with some planning, some segregation, optimization, and those kind of things. Um, some which are at a level where they say, okay, look, 9%, fine, let's just get ready. It's another cost of doing business here, but let's go ahead and move on. So it's not going to be that impact, but let's plan well so that we optimize or minimize it to the extent possible. At the same time, there are people who are right at the lower end of the pyramid, where it's a daily issue of having that margin in place. It's definitely an impact for them. But if from a UAE corporate tax point of view, they've given certain benefit to the small businesses. Like if it is up to 3 million turnover, then you don't have to comply, and it's a zero rate, or you're exempt from everything. You still have to file the return and comply, but you can file a nil return and get out of it. So there are certain things which are factored in for those kind of very small businesses, but others I don't think will have so much of an impact.
Okay, okay. So that's a positive outlook, and it's quite. That means it's accepted well. Okay, and it's good for business and the economy as a whole. Okay, okay. So can you just elaborate a little bit as to how governance and structuring of companies in the UAE has changed because of corporate tax? If you a little bit.
So what has happened is that not only corporate tax, but last couple of years, you need to see what has changed. So UAE, unlike many other markets, so it's very unique. It had ownership restriction, and that's why people used to go and set up in free zone. So the free zone mushroomed kind of. So we have 45 odd free zones here, which is unheard of for a country as small as this one. So the free zone here only meant that you can own the businesses 100%. Okay. It is without having any other added advantage to it, because there were no taxes earlier, right? So tax benefits were anyway not there, only ownership advantage was there. In last 1.5 year, government has relaxed all those rules as well. And even on the mainland, practically anybody can own businesses 100% except for few industries. So technically, there are no advantages now of operating one out of free zone or mainland and all that. Now, because of the heritage and the legacy, now we have 45 odd corporate tax law, because every licensing authority has its own tax law, a corporate law, sorry, not tax law, right? Now, therefore, it creates burden. It's not clear. There's no one single rule that applies everywhere. You have to still check with each licensing authority what applies where. But at the same time, then it creates a lot of opportunity for professionals to do the compliance for all of them, right? So it's how you look at it. So that having that as a backdrop, if you say that today you want to set up in mainland or in free zone, so the limitation, the benefits under the corporate tax rate for 0% rate for certain activity done out of certain free zones is limited. If you are doing only manufacturing, processing, or distribution out of certain free zones, then you get that 0% rate. Otherwise, practically everything is going to get taxed at 9%. And 9% being not that heavy a rate, people don't mind. So if you ask me today where to set up, I would say go and set up wherever you like. It's not too much of a difference. You can own the companies 100% anywhere. You see what are the other ease that you get by operating from any other place. So being in free zone has a restriction. You have to operate only out of that area. Being in mainland means you're free to operate from anywhere in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or whatever. So that way you need to see what makes sense from your business point of view. Are you doing here the entity only to reroute your trading transaction or all of that? Then you might as well be at the port where your trading activities are going to be. If you're doing it for services, you look at where your people are going to be based and do somewhere around it so that it's easier for them for commute and all of that. So really, there's no standard answer that you do this or you do that, but you can choose what you like from any of these options that you have. But yes, typical to UAE, we offer a lot of options. We are spoiled for choice.
That's an amazing point of view. Cool. So now we'll come to the question which everyone wants to know, the hiring. Okay. Before we understand what's happening right now, could you tell us, I remember in 2022, okay, when corporate tax was announced and even when VAT was announced and was implemented in 2018, I guess, right? There was so much of hiring, but there was a lot of senior level hirings in terms of corporate tax and salaries were like, I mean, people were just paid whatever they want, honestly. Okay. So can you tell us when CT was announced, what was the hiring pattern like and what were the sentiments of clients? Why were they hiring so many consultants? If you could just give us that point of view and what is happening right now vis-a-vis post it being effective.
So I'll give you some perspective. When VAT came in, there would have been almost 60 to 70 firms from India and many other parts came in and set up shop here, thinking that there'll be huge amount of opportunity and a lot of work around. But typical to Middle East, the compliance is not that heavy. A Bachelor of Commerce graduate can easily manage and compile data for a VAT return and can file either on a monthly or a quarterly basis very easily. Same is going to be the case even for corporate tax. We're not expecting the compliance to be very rigorous or like GST in India, where you definitely need somebody to oversee whether what has been done is correct or not. Because that's not going to be the case. What happened when the city got announced is that, see, understand that there has not been any taxes. There were no tax professionals here also. Okay, if you want to count how many people are there who have 10 plus year of experience in tax in UAE, you can easily count them. Okay, because there were no taxes, right? So even within Big Four, they did not had teams. Where did the first amount of hiring happen? It happened in the professional firms because they thought, okay, if we get our clients to give us assignment, how will we execute? So that's where the first level of hires happen, not the corporates. Okay. So MNCs, yes, couple of them would have hired early enough to start managing the tax and other things, but maximum hires happen in the professional consulting firms and professional audit firms. So audit firms typically never had a tax people or tax team except people who are doing VAT return. Now, unfortunately, the guys who are trained to do VAT return don't understand the tax so much. So they needed somebody who have had some kind of experience in taxation to come join them and at least put things in order, right? So that was the first level of hiring spree, as I would call it, has happened. Then came the corporates that they said, okay, we had VAT, which our finance team can do, but now with corporate tax coming, what accounting policy to follow, what tax impact to have on both sides, we need somebody with tax knowledge to take care of both of this together. Now, next year we'll have e-invoicing. A year after there'll be something else. So compliances are going to grow. Now that is a fact that one needs to accept, right? So if that is the case, then you need people to start coming in at different levels in the hierarchy for that purpose. But even some of them joined and they would say, okay, I don't have any tax work right now, but there's no taxes right now, right? Taxes are still coming in. So your actual compliance is still going to start. Now you're still only planning. You're assessing the impact. You're doing the changes. You're getting yourself ready. The hardcore tax and compliance work will come maybe in 25, not even in 24, right? So that's the timeline that you have. So some large MNCs thought that, okay, now we need to create a separate tax team within our fold. They started hiring. So of course you hire with senior person first, and then he kind of builds the team below him. Whether he then needs a professional, experienced professional, or a junior, or whatever, is something that they decide accordingly. So that's how this entire thing has unfolded so far, and that's what we are seeing from a lot of our clients as well.
Okay, so that's why a lot of advice tax advisors were hired to give advice to, especially with the big four and specialized firms, even mid-sized firms, all were hiring
Yes,
tax advisors to advise.
that's
Okay,
right.
okay. So many
And
of
that's why somebody with existing experience of similar nature of work was relevant.
Okay, okay, okay. So, sir, now what's happening currently in the market? Like, so we get a lot of CVs and a lot of people, currently who's already in Dubai, okay, who are already tax professionals saying that, hey, I want to move to a better role. Like, my counterpart is making 50K. I'm still stuck on 25K because the salaries were salaries paid were very heavy earlier, right? In the recent past. Okay, so that's one. What would you tell those who are already in Dubai with good corporate tax experience, who have done impact assessments, who have worked with advising clients? How should they make their career moves? That's one. What
So
opportunities will open for them?
yeah,
Yeah.
so there are two things which you must keep in mind. And compared to India, UAE is a very volatile market. Okay. When the downturn happens, the layoffs also happen very easily. And those who are laid off are also senior people first, because that saves them the maximum cost, right? So one needs to understand and take it up in a proper fashion. That don't be greedy upfront. Look for right companies, right fitment who has a longer term horizon with you. Even if they pay a little less than market, I would still go to them so that you have a longer stability with them. There will be people who will be paying higher, but then moment they realize that okay, this is not adding value to me, they'll cut it off also that fast. So Big Fours appointed big teams when VAT came in. Now those teams are half, or most of the work has been outsourced. And except the core people, you don't have everybody in the team. It's the same thing. Now they're building big teams on corporate tax, but understand that the work is today for advisory for a year. Compliance is not going to be that costly or that complicated, which then create more and more work for them. So if they can't redeploy these people to another set of skills or advisory roles, they'll chuck them off. And that's the real worry that I have, where people start lining up, okay, I want to come to UAE, I want to do this. Please hold on. Look at it very carefully. What the opportunity is. Does it make sense from a longer term point of view? Please also understand that moment you step out of India, you will no longer be relevant from an Indian role going forward. So then, after having spent 2, 3 years in UAE, if you want to go back to India, you'll find it more difficult to get a placement for you. So one needs to keep all this in mind. Okay, it might look very glorifying from outside. I'm not saying no to that. I've been here for 16 years and I've seen many downturns, and I've seen many people having to move within 30, 40, 50 days, lock, stock, and barrel, right? So one needs to be careful in choosing what kind of companies you choose, what kind of roles you choose, and whether it makes sense for you from a longer term point of view. Advisory things are going to be there for a year, year and a half. Then it's not recurring unless you are going to be a cutting edge professional known for that, right? So one needs to realize this part very, very carefully. There are roles, there are very good roles available, but then there are also as many number of people which are applying. It's not just that Indians are applying. A lot of European with tax background are applying. A lot of other nationalities are also applying. It's a competitive place. Within that, to segregate yourself, to create a position for you, and see to it that it is there for a longer tenure for you. Then you make the move. Otherwise, you'll make a move and then you might be then thinking after 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line in the West whether I did the right thing coming over here. So one needs to be clear, one needs to be understand what they are trying to do, right? There is so today within our clients, we have request to identify suitable people for their tax or tax management role for them of at least 5 to 7 clients that they are asking us. Others are asking more within the finance team to strengthen their finance team. So we have finance role also with some amount of tax oversight as a function. So those are also there. So if you have right kind of people who are still looking for it, please send us through. We'll try and screen them and put them in front of right people. I'm not saying no to that, but one needs to be careful. It's not everything which is hunky dory and everything that goes on well with everything. You know, you need to be cautious. You need to see to it that you identify the right corporates and right role for you. Don't worry about the money differences. If you're still making good money as compared to what you're making today, you should look at it from a next 3 year horizon point of view and then run around for that. If you want to keep jumping every year, that's not going to help you.
That's some solid advice. Okay. Okay. So
You
my
wanted us to be honest and straight, right?
yeah. Absolutely, but this is some good advice. So my next question for you is, what can you elaborate a little bit more, okay, on what kind? I know you said okay, they are looking for at building tax teams and advisory still on compliance will come in 2024. That's what you said, right? So can you tell
Right.
me right now what is the hiring sentiment currently? Okay, who are hiring? Why are they
There
hiring?
are, there
Yeah.
are two types of people, like consulting of professional firms which are already building their team. They are hiring either at a junior or a mid level because they have got certain people. There is amount of work that is coming in, so you still need people to execute those. And then, of course, there are other types of compliance that will open up as well over a period. So those will also kind of give more opportunity, right? So that's one segment which is at a professional consulting firm level where they're looking at experienced people, maybe junior with 2 3 years to all the way up to 5 7 8 years experience kind of people who will still have requirements. And then the second aspect is at the corporates. So there are two types of corporates. One which only want to build a tax team. They need a senior tax experienced person with an industry experience of 5 7 10 years, having handled multiple jurisdiction taxes and all. And they want such a person because then they want to let him handle the entire tax function for them, maybe for UAE and for the region, right? And then, of course, building a team under it. So there is also a requirement on the finance side or compliance side. So a lot of company secretaries, so because more and more compliance work is increasing. Now all substance requirement, this and other things need you to have proper board meetings done, proper minutes to be done, and all of that. So corporate law compliance work, which was non-existent, a year, I mean, maybe 2 years back, is now in demand, right? So some of those secretarial people are in demand. At the same time, the finance professional with mid and senior level roles are also in demand.
Okay, okay. So what would you tell people who are looking for opportunities over here? What would you tell them? Like, it is a market that is it's doing well at the moment, right? And people are ambitious enough. So I know you gave a solid advice where you said don't be greedy. Look at the company. So what advice would you give? What kind of company should they look at? So if I'm a finance person in India with with a tax experience as well, so where can I fit in? Or if I'm a tax person, I'm a compliance person, where do I fit in right now?
So if you are a tax compliance person, then either you look at role within the consulting firms to be part of the tax execution team, or a role within a larger multinational group where they are building a tax team. So these two are ideal for existing or compliance professionals. If you are finance and tax professional, then I would recommend you to look at finance and tax dual role within corporates, where you are part of the finance team, which is supporting tax function or also managing some of the tax function internally. So those are the kind of things that will kind of appeal one the most.
For a long term basis as well.
Yeah. How
Okay.
do you screen them? So again, UAE. There are companies which get set up every year, thousands of them. You have to look at how many years the group has been, what is the size of the group, and what are the kind of people which they already have, and are they looking at somebody to seriously manage their operation and things like that, or they've just set up, there is hardly anybody there, you are being added as one of the first person or in initial part of the team, then they may or may not remain there for a longer term, and then you have to start thinking around very differently. If you are joining a professional consulting firm, look at what is the size of the firm already, what are the kind of revenue that they already make, can they sustain investment into this new team even if they don't get client work for next 2 years? If yes, then you join them and then you make a mark and grow it together. That's all is fine. But it should not happen that within 1 or 2 years that you come, you moved everything lock, stock, and barrel from India, and you're back to square one hunting another job. I mean, look at it more in detail. Do a background research of the companies who are hiring. Do check about the people who are already there. Do look at their profile and what they have been around for, and what do they stand for. And that's what will give you a better understanding of what kind of corporates you're joining, and what kind of role you're getting. And ask questions, get more clarity, get complete detail. Don't look at just the compensation part. Ask for your role. What is it that they are looking at? Do they have many people doing it or not? How many people are there in the organization? If it is trading organization with only 4 5 people working, I won't recommend you to go in there separately as a tax person manager. So then you have to be more finance tax. Do they actually have a role and a lot of work for doing that? So all of this counts, right?
Yep. Yep. So this could be a repeated question, but I'll just ask you once again. There's a lot of mid-sized firms that I know, okay, who have a tax team, but their tax team, like there's no, it's not generating revenue. Like I have a lot of friends all around, and I get this, that hey, there's no great work coming in. So is this correct? Like, have you also felt the same? Like,
So look, like I said, that building a tax revenue portfolio is not that easy, and sustained revenue, I mean. Because look at it that way, that this year you will have a lot of consulting or advisory work. Is this going to be repeated next year? No. Your client will then need compliance. Within a year or so, that compliance, they'll move in-house because it's so easy. And that's what exactly happened with VAT. As I told you, 60 to 90 new firms opened offering VAT services. Within 2 years, 95% of them folded up. Because understand that cost of operating here in UAE is very high. It's not as simple as India, where there's hardly any cost of setting up a company. Very little. You can choose where you want to be, have an office and rent and all. Here you can't. A lot of these things are dictated to you, right? So because of that, the cost of operation goes up. And if you are not able to sustain with that kind of a revenue, you will not continue. There are big mid-size CA firm who came from India, even to do audit work, took 3 and 4 and 6 years to even get to a cash flow break-even position. Even after they had own clients who were referring work to them anyway. So you need to understand that therefore a smaller size audit firm, which is adding tax as another service, they are not able to charge a premium to their clients because they are not specialists. So with only that kind of revenue being added, another 10, 20, 30% revenue added, can you add 50 or 100% cost? And if you actually add that, can you sustain it for a 2 year period? That's
okay.
very important to understand.
Okay. Okay. So then right now with regard to corporate clients, okay, I mean they have already hired consultants, advisors, and they have done their impact assessments and all of those things. So what are they still looking for in consultants? What are they
No, no,
still
no.
looking?
So, look.
Yeah.
It's not that everybody is done and dusted and ready. There are still clients who are waking up now. There are still clients who are finalizing the proposal as we speak in this week and next week, and they're still getting geared. There are some who are still thinking about it. So there is still, see, unfortunately, UAE law allows you to follow your own financial year. So if you're following in April to March year, your first tax period starts only in 1st of April 24. So the guys who are sitting there say, okay, we have 9 months. No, okay, we'll do impact assessment, but we don't do it today, right? So there are still clients like that. It's not that it's all done. There is still a lot of pipeline that is still to be built up on that line, number one, so that there is a requirement for tax professionals. Secondly, as companies start getting ready with their impact assessment, then they know, okay, so much of compliance has to be done, right? So I will need an in-house person to do all this. How will I do it otherwise? So that's what the impact assessments are giving rise to, the identifying that role. Okay, you need somebody to manage this in-house, otherwise it will become very costly. So let's hire somebody. So that also is happening.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we've got a lot of questions. Let's address the
There
questions.
will
But I
be.
still, yes, I still have a few more questions to be asked. But let's look at Faiz. He says, from recurring compliance point of view, are you aware, will there be any mandatory tax, audit, tax inspection in the UAE tax authority for returns filed? If yes, how long approximately will it take to get the tax clearance certificate?
So I don't know if Fayaz is aware of the UAE tax system. Under UAE corporate or VAT law, it's a self-assessment system. It means that what you file is accepted prima facie, right? If I give you an example of a VAT experience, now we are 5 years older or more, 5.5 years. The tax authorities have conducted about 600 to 700 audits, and that's it. For a population size of almost 500,000 registrant. So that's the level of auditing intensity that is there. So we expect a similar level of intensity, then you will not get audited for next 5 years. For that, so then once they pick up for audit, they take anywhere between 6 months to 9 months or even 2 years to close the audit. And we do not have a mandatory tax clearance certificate requirement. What do you need tax clearance certificate for? Right? So we don't have that requirement.
Okay, okay. Fayaz, I hope it answered your question. Okay. The next one is by Lake. So, as a fellow member of ICAI, how does it benefit to enter the UAE market, and what are the pre-entry requirements, compliances that needs to be done?
So it depends, Lake, on what you want to do here. If you want to do auditing, you need to then pass one exam and get an audit license. And only thereafter you can set up a audit firm. That too, you need a local Emirati partner who is also a commerce graduate at the minimum, and who has not sponsored any other audit firm or accounting firm to be there with you to get a license. That's the minimum licensing requirement. Thereafter, you set up an office, have few people, and then you start looking for work. So, pre-entry requirements, I would say more about your ability to fund yourself for next 2 to 3 years is your pre-entry requirement. Then about your qualifications. Qualification, okay, you have to pass 3 exams, and that's very simple. It's not very difficult. But those process you need to go through if you want to do audit. If you want to do tax, you don't need anything. You come and set up a consulting license and start doing it.
Okay. So, what advice would you give, for people like Lake? Like I know Lake actually. So he has his own firm in India. So what like there are a lot of CA firms in India, or individual practitioners who want to take it advantage of what's happening in the UAE. How could they leverage it? So what would you tell them?
If you're already doing very well back home and you want to see this as an expansion of what you're doing, be ready for a next 2 or 3 years investment. And you can then set up here and try and develop a client base outside of India for the services that you're doing. But you need to be prepared to invest for a 2 or 3 year time. That nothing happens overnight, right? You need to be here. You need to be meeting people here locally. They need to get confidence that you're going to be here for a longer term, and you have value addition to offer to them. If you can differentiate in that way, like any other professional service, that's when you start getting recognized, and then you get more and more client base. So it's not a only thing, only deterrent being that cost of operating here is slightly higher, and therefore you need to be prepared to invest in yourself for doing that. If that would have been in India, you don't need so much of cost of operation. If you are in Delhi and you want to open one branch in Bangalore, you can easily do it with minimal cost. No, so that's it, that differential is there. But like if you want to open, you are in Delhi and you want to open in Bangalore, you need to be there, you need to hire people there, you need to be in front of the client, you need to provide them comfort that yes, we are going to service you here. The same set of challenges out here also.
Okay, so in simple words, you have to be here if you want to do business, or your representative has to be here. There's no remote kind of working
It
possible.
doesn't work. No. How many businesses will give you work based on remote? If they want to outsource some of the work, yes. But for that, then you need to have outsourcing capability, which I don't know how much money you can make out of that cost differential or cost leverage. And are you looking at that part?
Okay, okay. So the next question is from Amit. He says, "How can we get into tax in Dubai, corporate tax, with having Indian experience in GST and income tax?"
So Indian experience is relevant, as I've always said. However, UAE laws are different. UAE laws are implemented differently, and there is a different way of interpreting and using it. So one needs to be careful and needs to adapt to the local environment and the local governing laws. So that adaptation will take some time for anybody coming from India. Okay. But yes, you need to invest in yourself, read well, get updated, get prepared, and of course, you can leverage your Indian experience to your benefit so that you can handle it better. There's no doubt about it. And that's why so much of demand for Indian tax professionals, right?
Okay, okay. So how can one be an exceptional tax advisor in the UAE? I mean, you're the best person to answer. How do you keep yourself updated? How do you understand? What is your
Well,
method? What is your method?
method, there is no method in the madness except the hard work, right? You have to keep reading, you have to keep yourself updated, you have to keep looking at more and more avenues to upgrade yourself. And I like taking more and more teaching or speaking sessions so that I read myself for myself on interest. And I try and take up different topics so that I read on all different topics and get ready that way, but that's the easiest way of keeping yourself updated. But no, I mean, look, in tax profession, whether in India or anywhere else, there is no substitute for reading and reading and reading and updating. I mean, you have to keep doing it. You have to keep abreast. If you are in firm like ours, then you have to keep abreast of multiple countries changes that is happening. If you are in India centric firm, then you only look at India and changes happening in India. But uh, you need to keep yourself updated with different see, there are different databases, there are different information service provider. You can subscribe to them and get all the newsletter right in your inbox, but you need to open and read them, right? There's no substitute for that.
Yeah.
You need to keep yourself updated, and then over a period, it's your experience of application which will make it different. So you're not just reading, but you're reading, looking at your surrounding circumstances and applying. So how you can uniquely apply to that situation will make you a different from anybody else. So that will come only with experience. That can't again be substituted with anything else.
Okay, so there are a lot of people I know who have already discovered opportunities in the UAE and are moving here, and they want to know, before even landing here, how can they get hold of the tax system so that they could fit fit in quickly. And there's a second segment of folks, who want to give interviews, okay, but they're not able to get through the interviews because whenever they go for the interview, they don't. They say, hey, UAE tax is very simple, and they don't prepare much, right? Because Indian tax is a lot more complex, right? So how should they prepare? What material should they look at, and where could they find these sources?
So there are two things, and you must understand this, that Indian tax law is codified. You have one book which Taxman publishes, and it has all the rules and guidelines and everything right there available, right? Unfortunately, we don't have that out here. Secondly, the law for implementation and law for litigation are two different laws. So the litigation law is common between VAT and corporate tax, which is called tax procedure law, right? So one needs to understand this. Secondly, and most of the people make mistake is that the free zones, mainland, how they operate, there are very different nuances as compared to what you are used to from an Indian point of view. Okay, and each has its own ground rules of how you operate and how you do things. Unless you understand these things, you will not be able to apply it correctly. In terms of material, we are 1 month away, but I have authored a book on UAE corporate tax, which we are launching along with Taxman, which will soon be available for everybody to read and refer to. And they're exactly same thing we are trying to do. We are trying to put every reference material in context at the same place so that you can refer it all together and be ready. Okay, so today, if you go to tax government tax website and all, you'll get a lot of different law and a lot of different cabinet decisions or ministerial decision or FTA decisions. So all of that, where to apply, how to apply, where to read, which section to refer to, is all cross reference.
Yep. Yep.
So you don't know which one you're picking up at what point in time. So that's a bit more confusing. But again, no substitute for not reading. You have to read it, understand it, and see how it applies and synchronizes it. So it's not as complicated as Indian Income Tax Act, but at the same time, it has most salient features of all the proper corporate tax regimes across the world. We don't have too many detailed rules which will tell you do this and do this and don't do this, and therefore you need to have an experience to understand where to apply and how. And those are the nuances that is somebody is looking at. So that's why one needs to prepare well and not take it for granted. Okay, I know Indian income tax, so I know everything in the world. No, it doesn't work that way. Yes, Indian income tax is one of the complex. It's not end of the road. There are other which are more complex also. There are other which are more simpler also.
True that, and well said. So, and we're waiting for your book. I mean, that is amazing because this will really help a lot of people to go to, to find one book and to refer through. Right? It's
That's right. Yeah.
easier. It's easier, and it's really needed. And it doesn't have a digital version as well.
We will be doing both.
Okay. And any date by when will it be launched?
I wish I can give you a date, but we are doing the final proofreading as we speak. Once we give it to them, then we'll fix the time. But also, other thing is that to launch it here, I need to also get an approval from the ministry for
Okay.
publishing the book. So that also might take a little while. But what we may think is that we may do it differently. That we start with a launch in India and then we do a launch here.
Okay. That's excellent.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I have this last question. Okay, I know a lot of people with transfer pricing, international taxation experience. Okay, so where do they fit in? And I also see a lot of transfer pricing. A lot of firms are getting a lot of transfer pricing opportunities, right? But they don't have
Yeah.
the people as well. So could you
Yeah.
highlight a little on that? And
So
how can a corporate tax person also gain knowledge of transfer pricing, like if that's possible?
that's very easy. In fact, if you start looking at Indian material also, that will help you a lot to start with, to prepare yourself. And understand that the UAE transfer pricing is also more or less on the same line as OECD transfer pricing is. So India has a bit more complex version of it, but we don't have that complex. It's just five standard method. You should know where to apply which one at what point in time. Again, see, transfer pricing is more about compliances, right? Like I said, the compliance is something you require when you start the tax year. So a lot of people are yet to start the tax year and they'll start maybe on January of 24. And that's when they need to benchmark their transaction. They need to come up with the right markups for that and all of that, right? So yes, we don't have enough number of people here who do transfer pricing. On transfer pricing, yes, there are Indian firms which are taking work on an outsourced basis also, leveraging what they've already done for India. And corporates are also recruiting a lot of people in-house for handling transfer pricing on a longer term basis, because that's going to be one centerpiece of the compliance. It's going to remain recurring for some time to
Okay, so there is opportunities in transfer.
come.
Okay, okay. And what kind of opportunities would it be? Only in the big four, or only in this, on these on the firms, advisory firms, like where?
So big four and the consulting firms will definitely have you for a longer period of time. Within MNCs, it will be maybe one person within a tax team or something who does transfer pricing. Otherwise, they don't need too many big fours. They'll anyway have somebody who is going to do benchmarking for them. So you need internal person to basically oversee that what has been done is correct, whether that has been correctly implemented in all the intercompany agreements, invoices, and all that being raised, and create a database of what has happened at the end of the year to make sure that compliance requirements are met. You know, so that of course you need somebody in house, but corporate wise there will be limited role for only transfer pricing specialist, but professional firms will have that for sure.
Okay, okay. So this is some excellent advice. Okay, would you want to share, to conclude the session, anything else that we missed out, or any advice would you have?
Not really an advice, but just
Okay,
general
okay.
discussion points. So, look, guys, there is opportunity. I mean, you can make most of it, and you can look at it from very very different perspective. That look, at the end of the day, you're doing X thing in India, and you're going to do something different when you come out. Your entire horizon is going to change. Your entire outlook is going to change. And at the same time, please understand your Indian experience, while relevant, is going to change completely. So you're going to build onto a different skill set altogether. And if you're ready for that, then you take up that entire thing. It's not going to be as same as what you've done so far. It is different. It will remain different because it will have a different outlook. What we do so intensely, which is compliance in India, is not done so intensely outside, right? Yes, you need to be focused. At the same time, you need to have more a macro outlook, more a broader outlook to see how I can add to my skills, what else can I add to my skill set, and how I can gain that from my longer term career growth perspective. If you look at it from that point of view, and if something makes sense, do it.
Okay, that's amazing. So yes, so I mean, thank you so much for your time. This is some amazing advice, honest to the point, but really needed. And we got a complete perspective as well on the market and the why. So the why. So right now, from what I gauge, is like there is a demand, but not so much. People have to be careful and not be like, hey, be careful when taking up an opportunity, because this won't sustain for a very long time unless, as you said, you're really good and you're the best, because you've
Yeah,
seen what happened in VAD, and can then this is going to happen again.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So yes, sir, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in. If you have any questions, just you can message us. You can message sir on LinkedIn, and we will definitely email you the content that we're going to make an article. We'll also make short bite-sized videos and pieces, so you can consume on the go, and we'll email you the video as well. So yes,
Thank you so much, Chantal, and thank you,
thank
Finance
you.
Story, for having
Thank,
us. It was
thank you.
great talking. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.